and it was a win for the first team and a win for the second team. So it's safe to say that it was a winning weekend across the board. Was it a winning weekend for you, sir?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anytime we have that sort of performance to talk about, you can definitely chalk it up as a big old W, first 3 points of the season. And so here to break it down, but really happy with the performance Saturday afternoon.
All right, so lay it out for me. I was listening from 90 miles south, so I got my earful of what was going on, but it was what you've been looking for when it comes to the progressions and the relationships and building out of the back and being very, very clinical and tactical and getting things flipped in a hurry. And it wasn't just the big names that were working; it was the folks at the back. You're sitting there and you're looking at, Album 88, Matias Galarza, you're seeing him getting engaged. You're seeing Mihai on a great header to start a break the other way. So it was a bunch of different folks that were getting involved, and that's what you're looking for to keep everybody honest.
Well, look, the easiest explanation is your designated players felt dangerous, looked dangerous, were dangerous. I've been very critical of Latte Latte. I think we've all been very critical of Miguel Almiron since coming over as well. And we've all sat here and said, Alexei Miranchuk right now is your best designated player. And I don't know if this team is as good as it can be if that's the case with respect to Alexei and how good he is. You were always going to be capped by if Latte Latte's not dangerous, if Miggy's not dangerous, the team's not ultimately going to be that dangerous. And that was not the case on Saturday afternoon. Latte Latte was involved not only in the opening goal, but in moments before that in which he nearly broke through, but also in moments after that ultimately led to goals as well. Miggy, 3 primary assists. Again, don't necessarily need him to be a goal scorer. I mentioned this on the full-time report, the idea of being a playmaker and setting other guys up, if that's what's best suited right now, getting the job done. But it's been a long time since you've had those two guys, Latte Latte and Miggy, look and feel dangerous. And when they do, I think you get the sort of result that you got on Saturday afternoon. And now the question is, are they dangerous because progression and growth and learning and blah, 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 blah? Or are they dangerous because Philly is an absolutely dreadful team who, for whatever reason, decided to break it all down from last year's Supporter Shield roster? That's a question we start to find out this Saturday, right? You have to follow it up. This season is still not going anywhere if this was a one-off performance. And that's where the discussion and the intent really begins as we move forward is, okay, now that we've seen it, now that we felt it a little bit, is that based on poor opponent? Which again, DC United is not, world beaters either. But can you run it back? Can you string together victories, especially because you're still in the early stages of this lengthy stretch with a number of games at home? But I will say this, John. It was the first time the team looked like they were having fun up front. Yeah. And I think you saw some joy from Latte Latte. I spoke with Nick Alifi. The pressure that had to come off of his shoulders when he was able to finally score, because he had some dangerous moments a week ago in the loss. He even had a dangerous moments. Andre Blake gets a really nice save, a foot to the ball, and prevents it from going in. And it's just like, man, what does this guy have to do to score? It wasn't even when he finally broke through, though, that you saw the joy. It was on the second goal. It was on Thomas Jacobs. I don't know if it was a dummy. I don't know if he got cross-footed. I don't know if the pass was behind him. Either way, he was involved. He drew defenders. The ball gets through. Jacobs wide open on the backside. And what's interesting to me is not to follow Jacob, who had the goal, or Miggy, who had the primary assist. Look at Latte Latte as he was kind of on the ground. Again, whether it dummied it or it cross-footed him, look at how he reacts to that goal. Look at how his energy is picking himself off the floor, running to Jacob, pointing to Miggy, smiling. It just feels like it feels like the first time these guys are having fun together. And I think you saw that from Miggy as well. I think you saw that from him, and you just kind of wonder the weight that was lifted off Latte Latte. I think the weight that's now been lifted maybe off of Miggy after hearing a couple of weeks of criticism It just felt good on Saturday, and now the challenge is to recreate it, to do it again. But if you're going to have your three DPs be dangerous up front, that's going to help protect the midfield. It's going to help protect the defense because the other team has to respect the attack coming the other way. First time they showed that this season at that level. And it'll be interesting to see how other teams now have to adjust if they can show that again.
Miggy, 3 primary assistances, 5 chances created, 3 big chances created. Go ahead and hydrate. This is going to take a minute. 5 progressive carries totaling 115 meters, 6 key passes, 11 passes in the final third, 3 defensive contributions. Latte Lot, an ex-Abe of 1 1/3, 3 shots, 2 on target, 3 recoveries, 1 5 duels. AM59, a .71 ex-Abe, 2 shots, 3 for 3 on long balls, 3 defensive contributions, and all the other stuff in the score sheet. So that's the abridged version of your 3 DPs busting out against Philadelphia. And you mentioned replicating it. One of the reasons that one of the dudes that they're going to have to replicate it against was part of Philly last year, and you're going to have Ty Barabota to have to deal with next week. So it's all of this seems to be, it's fun tying it together. But you mentioned the DPs and going further back, once again, you mentioned Jacob with his goal. Baez getting engaged, Galarza coming forward, and he was a part of one of those goals up the left-hand side off the quick 1-2 with Miggy coming up the left. Then, like I said, Mihai with that clearance header directed toward a counterattack, which I thought was really smart. We'll hear from Anea Mihai coming up in the next half hour. But there was a lot of three-dimensional, Vulcan chess going on here with all of these different parts that you're looking to see on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, it's also all the goals. Yes, they kind of came in a transitional moment, but they felt different.
Mm-hmm.
That first goal was kind of get the ball in front to Latte Loft, let him run onto it. It's one on the keep, and just let him use it's the sort of goal that he was brought in to score. There's a ton of green space in front of him. He's faster than the defender. He gets a step, he gets an angle, he picks out a spot, he buries it. But there were the other types of goals were kind of. I mean, the third goal was a quick break that turned into a 3-on-2, essentially, an extra man with your 3 DPs all being involved, Latte Loth and Miggy, and then eventually to Moranchuk and there. And then the other one was again where Latte Loth is getting into a dangerous spot. Miggy is picking him out. Again, I don't know if it was a dummy or if he kind of cross-footed him, but either way, it gets through the entire box and Jacob runs onto it wide open, and you got to give credit to Jacob for taking the space and being up there and expecting it to get through. I think you've seen at times, well, I've got to play defense here because Latte Loth is going to take a touch, and I don't know if it's going to go towards their goal or towards our goal. It gets all the way through, and you have to credit Jacob for being ready for that moment as well. And then the finishing, just in general, I know Latte Loth had one that was early on, got saved. Alexi had one that he'll tell you should have been buried. It just went wide of the far post. But beyond those 2 chances, they converted the opportunities that they had. And this goes directly into the fact that Philly did not. It's a completely different game, scarily so, in my opinion. A completely different game if that penalty kick just before halftime gets converted. It hits the inside post. It comes all the way across the face of goal, but stays out. And just before, in stoppage time, Atlanta United avoids that disaster. I think you carry that momentum, that boost of we're still leading going into halftime, and then you turn it around 90 seconds into the second half, and it's now 2-0. And I think – and I joked with Nick, those 2 moments were probably separated by 25 minutes of real time, but essentially 2 minutes in terms of the game clock, 45 plus, and then into the 47th. And it's such a different game if that penalty kick's converted. I just don't know if you're able to score off the half that quickly. And so you kind of look at it as a game that had multiple turning points. I honestly think that was the biggest moment in the game. I just think from there, it's so different if you go to halftime 1-1. Ultimately, you didn't. You came out of half with the right mentality and eventually take a 3-0 lead. Unfortunate you couldn't hold the clean sheet. But you'll take the 3 points either way.
One other guy that I want to kind of focus in on here a little bit is Cooper Sanchez, who continues to just feel right at home. Like you don't even have to look at the DOB on the driver's license. Doesn't matter. You're ready to go. Tata's going to put you in, and Cooper continues to impress. His numbers across the board, and this was the interesting part to me. 29 to 36 overall for 81%. Had one key pass and had one good cross. Then defensively, once again for Cooper, 8 defensive contributions, won all 3 tackles he was engaged in, had a pick, 4 clearances, 2 recoveries, was 5 of 10 on his duels on the day, half in the air, half on the ground. And, obviously had the one foul or, he wasn't going to get messed with either. But you end up with, once again, Cooper Sanchez at right-hand side of Jacob, Cooper Sanchez, and Alexi Miranchuk, because I put him in quotes, knowing the floating nature of the 3 DPs up top. That right-hand side's been pretty solid here recently.
Well, I think you start with the decision-making of Tata when he made the roster change. And you wanted to get Matthias Galarza into the starting lineup, and you have a decision to make. Are you taking the young 17-year-old out in favor of Steven Alzate, who's a little bit more experienced in that scenario? And that was not the choice that Tata made. And I think Cooper Sanchez, it's a two-way street. I think Tata rewarded Cooper for what he's shown. And then once more, Cooper rewarded Tata for having that faith and making the decision to say, hey, you haven't done anything to lose your spot. Not that Steven Alzate did anything to lose his either. But a decision had to be made at some point if you're going to force Galarza into the starting lineup. And so it was rewarded, and you did see him involved. And I think that's the most difficult thing for someone at that age stepping into this level of play is not be too concerned with, I have to do this to make sure I'm involved defensively and not be involved in the attack. Or the flip side, I want to be involved in the attack at the loss of, but I'm not engaged where I need to be defensively. The ability, and look, this is what you always ask your midfield to do. Help in the attack, help in the defense, help bridge the gap. But the ability of a youngster to be able to do both of those so well and do it competently and not sacrifice one for the other, I think says a lot. And we've talked about it. We don't need to go through the whole list of guys, but the academy, the twos, has just done such a great job of preparing guys to come in. And I mentioned it doesn't matter that he looks young. He's not playing young. And he's not the first guy that we've said that about being given an opportunity and when called upon, doesn't feel like the moment's too big, isn't making mistakes you would see young guys make. It's really impressive that he's the next in line to do that. And I think proper of Tata to reward what he's seen and continue giving him those chances as well. I also want to talk about real quick, John.
Yeah.
And this is, I've been on my soapbox since day one or of this season, match day one at least. I'm a Stian Gregerson guy. Right. I just am. My preferred pairing was always going to be Stian and Mihai, kind of what we saw a little bit towards the end of last season. Tata goes with Barakal. Barakal picks up a hamstring injury at some point, either in last match or in training this season, unable to go, and Stian is back there. And I do think we saw a little bit of rust in some of the delivery, some of the passing from Stian. But there's just something Stian has that Barakal can't give you. I think the size with which he plays with, I think the speed with which he plays with, it just feels safer. It just feels more secure to me. And again, I am biased. This is my first choice center back pairing. And I would like to see Stian continue in there, even if Barakal can go off of that hamstring. I just feel a little bit better back there, especially knowing that against a team that's not Philly, you probably are going to face some transition moments. And I think Stian is a little bit better built to handle those than Barakal if he's the one that's caught back as opposed to Mihai. So, again, everyone can feel however they want about that. That's how I feel on it. And I'd like to see them continue with Stian and Mihai.
By the way, Jacob and Stian Gregerson won the most aerials in the afternoon, 4 each. You also had Mihai winning 3. What did you think of Atlanta United not bowing down to Philly in their game and standing up to them and winning the staring contest when it got to the extracurriculars.
Yeah, well, if anything, I do think that the moments near the end of the first half probably could have been handled a little bit better from all parties involved. I understand the first card. If you're going to give a penalty kick, you're certainly going to give a card there.
Yeah.
I think Tata picked one up. I think Latte Loth maybe at that same time picked one up. And I think there was a second one.
Well, then you had, I think it was Ricardo Rios, the other assistant.
Yeah, second one given to the bench, and so I don't necessarily know if that was handled as ideal as possible, but ultimately, I think you're able to remove yourself from all of those moments once you hit that second goal in the 47th minute, and once that game kind of turns into full game control from that moment on, even before the third goal came 20 minutes later. Once it's 2-0, you can kind of choose and dictate how it's played. We looked at the stats as we always do, John, as you know, in our first segment of the post-game show, the full-time report, and you say, hey, well, look, they had, it was 54% or 56%, whatever it was. And I say, but that's what's going to happen when you get to dictate how you want to play. When you have a 2-goal lead that eventually is a 3-goal lead for the entirety, essentially, of the second half, the 2-goal lead, then you can cede possession and be comfortable in that moment. And so, yeah, I think once you got into that 2-goal lead, 2 minutes into the second half, then you start to say, all right, all we got to do is be a little bit smart here. We can't take a second yellow that gives us a red. We can't take a straight red. We've got to do everything to just make sure that we can ride this out. And they did, and rightfully so.
And we now get to be paired back up again, sir. Now that I have survived Macon, allegedly, in the high school basketball championships, it's you and me coming up this weekend with DC United on Saturday night.
I don't know. Nick Alifi said that you're not allowed back until they lose.
That's what I figured. I figured Nick would go that way. Yeah.
And I will say this: the full-time report was much more fun and much easier after picking up a full 3 points and a really nice showing. Where and again, like, we just haven't been able to compliment some of the guys that we complimented. Like, I'd almost like to be in a situation where I'm like, all right, do we really want to compliment these guys as hard as we did after this one again? Like, that'd be great too. And I think the opportunity probably to spotlight on a couple of other guys would be nice, because myself specifically, maybe Nick a little bit less, but I was very on top of the performances of Latte Loth and Miggy, and also partially because I've been so harsh on them previously. And so I'd like to sit here and be like, all right, now we're seeing this pattern and we're seeing the start of something. I know DC United is not the best team in MLS, and so there's always going to be a little bit of this idea of like, all right, are they doing this because this team's figuring it out, or are they doing it because the opponent's dreadful? I'll be honest, it didn't make me feel great to know how the result went match day 1 against Cincinnati, and then see them get completely obliterated last night. And you kind of start to talk to yourself like, all right, well, maybe they're not that good. And so what does that mean for us going back? But we're a month past that. We can look forward. Let's just hope that this is the start of something, especially because you have a run of these home games for the next 5, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And kind of like the Hawks and the win streak they are on right now, there are opponents here that you should be beating night in, night out. And hopefully DC United is the next one.
And we will be hanging out on the mid-level after the match is over for the full-time report, after you have sampled things that I will not have had the chance to sample. And we're going to have it and see what happens when they go up against a better defensively DC United team coming up this weekend. As always, my friend, great to see you. We'll catch up with you again pretty soon.
Yeah, John, it's been too long that we talked about a nice, easy 3 points. So this has been fun.